Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Marvel Studios' production of Captain America Brave New World looks like it's in a world of trouble. Now, according to some reports, the budget for Captain America Brave New World has ballooned to over $375 million, and that budget may possibly be the final nail in the coffin for Marvel Studios and could possibly lead to the termination of Kevin Feige, who has been under a lot of pressure ever since the disastrous Marvel Studios Phase 4, and Fail 5, Phase 5, ever since those two phases have basically underperformed and started creating a string of box office flops, such as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and the Marvel Studios has been struggling and hoping for a hit, and with Captain America Brave New World, it may be the end of the world for Kevin Feige if this film just does not do well at the box office. And unfortunately, the elements of this film look like they are ones that may not really do well at the box office for Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios, because Captain America Brave New World basically builds on a story that was established in the last part of the last successful phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where Steve Rogers, who was played by Chris Evans, decides to go back in time to go be with Agent Carter, and as he looks to go be with Peggy Carter, he gives his shield to Sam Wilson to become the new Captain America. And unfortunately, when it came to that storyline, which was built up in the Disney Plus series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that storyline really did not resonate with a lot of comic fans when it was originally introduced as a part of the all-new, all-different Marvel, and many comic fans do not see Sam Wilson as Captain America. Moreover, the whole concept of Sam Wilson becoming Captain America in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier really didn't resonate very well with a lot of comic and sci-fi and MCU fans, so this film is already on a rickety structure, and a rickety structure that may not be strong enough to be able to get comic fans to really care about the character. Now, that's a big problem for Marvel Studios, which has been struggling to try to find a way to write a story with Sam Wilson as Captain America. And as they've been trying to write a story that features Sam Wilson as Captain America, what has happened over at Marvel Studios is that the film has gone into development hell, and gone into development hell because as they've basically shot an entire complete film, which originally featured WWE wrestler Seth freaking Rollins as the Cobra, I believe, of the Serpent Society. They originally shot a complete film of Captain America Brave New World, which was supposed to introduce the team of the Thunderbolts, a rogue team of so-called superheroes. Unfortunately, as they've basically shot this film and tested this film with audiences, many audiences were so disgusted by this film and so turned off by this film that Marvel Studios began to insist on having a series of reshoots of this film, and that's how this film's budget started to get bloated. Now, compared to the original Captain America, the first Avenger, it only cost $140 million to make the original Captain America, and the budget was bumped up for Captain America, the Winter Soldier, to $170 million, and eventually with Captain America Civil War, the budget was $250 million, but in all of those films, you could basically see the money on the screen, and you could see the stories being very compelling, with the exception of Civil War, which I never really thought was that good. It was okay, but it wasn't that good. That was really the start of the decline of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But with this Captain America Brave New World, this may be a film that's in a world of trouble, and I'll repeat the reasons why it's in a world of trouble. One is the fact that the Sam Wilson character is seen as the Falcon in the comics and seen as the Falcon by many fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And many of those fans basically got turned off because they wanted to see Steve Rogers still remain Captain America, and they wanted to see Steve Rogers in action because they consider Captain America to be Steve Rogers, and the Sam Wilson character really has not gone over and resonated with fans. And since Sam Wilson has not really resonated with fans in the comics or the movies and TV shows, this may be an anchor on the film, and it may be an anchor on the film because the whole thing of a lead character is that they have to answer three critical questions. Who is the main character? What do they want? And why should we care? And it's just very hard to care about Sam Wilson, Captain America, who was a supporting character, because there's a big difference between a lead character and a supporting character. And Sam just doesn't have enough presence to be a character. I mean, Anthony Mackie is a fine actor in a supporting role, but I don't really see him really carrying an entire movie like Captain America. And it doesn't help that the Captain America Sam Wilson is not really a compelling character who has a backstory that makes you interested in him. And the saddest part about this is that this story just isn't strong enough, even if you go out here and introduce the Thunderbolts, because the Thunderbolts in and of themselves are not compelling characters as related to this adaptation, because the Thunderbolts are basically looking like a mid group when you've got people like the second Black Widow, you've got the Red Guardian, you've got the U.S. Agent, which is kind of a redundancy because he was the original the replacement for Steve Rogers, and then you've got the Red Hulk. So it's feeling like something that's really second tier, and it's not something that would really compel people to say, hey, I really want to go see these characters. So there's not really much here that really makes you care about this movie, and that's possibly why this film basically tested so poorly, because you've got a lot of background characters being pushed to the foreground and no really compelling reason to go see them because there are no stakes and no real conflict. And again, that's possibly why the film tested so poorly, but Kevin Feige basically went out here and scrambled to go get a new script written and get the film reshot, and that's a very dangerous sign as related to film. As someone who has, again, studied the entertainment industry for over 25 years, I can tell you when a studio starts reshooting an entire movie, that's a really bad sign. That was something that did in many of the Snyderverse movies, was the constant reshoots, and again, reshoots are very costly, and when you have a film that is reshot, having scenes reshot multiple times, you lose that consistency, and you lose that consistency because you don't have a structured screenplay. And that was the biggest problem with Captain America Brave New World, was they didn't have a structured screenplay from the beginning. Now, one of the things I know as a screenwriter is that if you don't have a solid screenplay, you're not going to have a solid movie, because all of the production starts with the screenplay, and if the screenplay is not well written and does not really follow a linear pattern, what you're going to do is wind up in a vicious cycle of putting on patches, and the patches you put in will make the film completely uneven. And that's what I believe happened here with Captain America Brave New World. I believe what happened here is that they shot an original footage for this movie, and then as they saw the negative responses from test audiences, what they did was go out and look to reshoot the movie, trying to patch things together. And when you try to patch things together with a movie, you're basically going to create an unmitigated disaster, because things are not flowing organically as related to storytelling, and that's why you want to make sure you have your screenplay in place. Unfortunately, when Kevin Feige greenlit this movie, it was during a time when Disney was speculating on streaming, being the next big thing. And as he speculated on streaming being the next big thing, what he did was, I believe, go out here and hire a inexperienced screenwriter to write this screenplay, and that is the foundation of all the problems as related to Fail 4, I mean Phase 4, and Fail 5, I mean Phase 5, as related to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The major problem here is that Kevin Feige really just did not hire the right screenwriter to write a compelling screenplay, and because this character is very two-dimensional, because oftentimes supporting characters are two-dimensional because their job is to support the lead character, it's hard to turn that character into a three-dimensional character that really draws us in, because there's a major difference between a main character and a supporting character. And again, the main character oftentimes gets that third dimension and that depth and those layers, and that's a main problem that I believe happened with Sam Wilson as related to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and also with Captain America Brave New World. It became a problem because this character really was not written to be a lead character, and he's not really able to command the screen because he's just not Captain America. Again, Captain America was originally written to be a lead character. The story of Steve Rogers was one that was compelling. We were introduced to Steve in Captain America, the First Avenger. He was the center focus of that movie, and sadly, he's not allowed to be the center focus anymore. And with the focus on Sam Wilson, he was basically never put as the lead as he was supposed to be. He was sharing screen time with Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier, and that's a real problem because, again, with the character of Sebastian Stan, he's a little bit better developed and would basically outshine Sam Wilson as Captain America, and he was outshining him in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So there's a real problem with the storytelling, and it really comes from the source material, where they really didn't do a good job of developing Sam Wilson or building him up to take over the role. No, Sam Wilson basically feels like a hand-me-down hero. Yes, he's got the costume on, but there's no mission behind him. There's no direction behind him, no focus behind him, and we can't see him as a lead character, and that's why this film basically is on its way to being an unmitigated disaster. And an unmitigated disaster that could possibly do damage to Marvel Studios as related to its business, because this would be the, I believe to be, third or fourth flop for Marvel Studios, which has been suffering from films that have underperformed, such as Eternals, such as Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and Thor: Love and Thunder. And now we are starting to head into a string of flops, such as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and the most recent Marvel Studios superhero film that bombed at the box office, The Marvels. And this film may possibly be even a bigger bomb than The Marvels, which cost $250 million to make and basically flopped at the box office on its first weekend. Captain America Brave New World could possibly wind up being the biggest flop in Marvel Studios history. It might wind up possibly being the biggest flop in Marvel Studios history because Captain America Brave New World basically, again, at $375 million, cannot possibly wind up ever making any sort of profit when you consider the business model for movies and entertainment. Now, in the whole business of movies and entertainment, a film that is released at theaters has to make 3 times its budget just to break even, and at $375 million, there may be no way for Captain America Brave New World to basically even try to break even, because it's starting out with story elements that are weak, such as Sam Wilson, a supporting character, being in a lead role, and that lead character being black, which means in the whole global box office, many countries like China may not want to go out here and support this movie, and that is going to have a very negative impact on the overall global box office. Now, with the global box office, again, this film having a black lead and a secondary character at that, this is going to make it that much harder to get towards the mark that they need to get just to break even, because at $375 million and then another 150 to 200 million for marketing, this film would have to make $1.7 billion just to break even, and it would need to make at least $2.5 billion in order to pull a profit, and that would mean that this film would have to surpass Black Panther and Avengers Endgame as related to being some of the highest grossing films globally at the box office. And again, with the character and the story, I don't see that as possible. No, what I see happening here with Marvel Studios' Captain America Brave New World is them possibly having a flop on the level of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, where they tried to take an 80-year-old Harrison Ford and have him play Indiana Jones one more time in an effort to try to get a cash grab at the box office. Unfortunately, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Depends didn't really do well at the box office, as the geriatric Harrison Ford wasn't able to draw at the box office because nobody believed that an 80-year-old man would go out and be out here pulling these stunts. Not to mention, they made the character of Indiana Jones into a loser and made him pathetic. So the character didn't resonate with audiences who could not identify with a decrepit old man who was in his last days. It didn't resonate with audiences, and I don't believe that Captain America Brave New World will resonate with audiences, considering the fact that they've basically made this movie into a jumbled mess with the just constant reshoots and rewrites, which are a sign that a studio is extremely insecure. And they were insecure basically because they were introducing this black Captain America to white audiences who don't see Sam Wilson as Captain America and see Sam Wilson as the Falcon. And with these test audiences' responses being extremely negative, it's not a good look for this movie. And the budget in and of itself will place it in the stratosphere of some of the biggest box office flops in history. Place it in the category of the biggest flops in history, such as Batman and Robin, such as, again, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and the Marvels, and basically lead to the possible end of Kevin Feige's tenure at Marvel Studios, because there's a point where a CEO like a Bob Iger is going to have to say enough is enough. I mean, 3 straight box office flops would usually end the career of an executive, and Kevin Feige basically has been on a road of just one bad project after the other due to his mismanagement. And if I were an executive, again, I would have never greenlit a Falcon and a Winter Soldier where we transition into a Falcon becoming Captain America, because I would have looked at the sales for all new, all different Marvel and the sales for Sam Wilson, and I would have said, no, I'm not doing this because there's no audience here. There's no audience that cares, and there would be no way for me to get a box office. So what the thing that I would do with this whole thing is basically recast either another guy as Steve Rogers, or just basically shelve the character, because this would be a, again, unmitigated disaster, and that's what this film is going to be, an unmitigated disaster at the box office, an unmitigated disaster because it basically shows how the studio wasn't really thinking critically when it was greenlighting projects, and as they weren't thinking critically as they were greenlighting projects, they were not really staying true to the source material, and that's going to lead to a major disaster, a major fiscal disaster for Disney, which is hemorrhaging money as related to series of box office failures from Star Wars, a series of box office failures at Marvel, and Hasbro is going to possibly wind up taking a bath on a Captain America wave of Marvel Legends, because when it comes to black characters, they don't really sell very well. As a black man, I hate to say that, but it is true. A lot of times you get peg warmers, and a whole case of Sam Wilson as Captain America, it hasn't really sold well for retailers. So this whole project is, again, a major disaster that could have implications on the black fantasy and science fiction market. Now, when it came to black fantasy and science fiction, we saw that there was an audience for Black Panther, and yes, they came out for Black Panther because he was a black character and he was a lead character, but they didn't come out for Wakanda Forever, and this basically could be the film that slams the nail in the coffin for black fantasy projects, and that's one of the things that saddens me, that we do have a market for black fantasy and science fiction movies, and sadly, due to the poor execution of guys like Kevin Feige, who don't understand how to craft stories, we may see the end of black science fiction and black fantasy films, even though there's a clear marketplace for them. There's a clear marketplace where people will buy the merchandise if it's done right, like they did the initial Black Panther wave. There are people who will go see the movies like they did with Black Panther, but when you have someone who doesn't understand how to market towards black audiences, what they do is what Kevin Feige did here and give us a tokenized black character. And as they give us a tokenized black character, it doesn't lead to a brave new world of black comic, sci-fi, and fantasy fans coming to the movies. No, it leads to the end of the world for black sci-fi and fantasy merchandise and movies and as related to the mainstream media. And again, as much as I'd like to believe this is being done deliberately, it's just is clear incompetence from Kevin Feige, who didn't read the room as related to science fiction and fantasy, because had he read the sales numbers for Captain America books as related to all different Marvel, he would have known from there that this character wasn't strong enough to carry a movie and wasn't strong enough to carry a series, just not strong enough all around. And when you pick a character that isn't strong and you put so much money behind them, that's when people have to look at you with a side eye and look at your business decisions and see them as just really being suspect, because only an incompetent person would go out here and greenlight Sam Wilson as Captain America. That's something I wouldn't do, and I'm a black man who creates something like science fiction and fantasy. No, I would never do that at all, because I know that the impact of this movie failing at the box office would do damage to this whole superhero genre, and do even more devastating damage to the black sci-fi and fantasy marketplace, because with the failure of Captain America Brave New World, executives can go back to their old world of business in denying projects for black producers of black content and keep us from seeing a richer picture of black heroes in science fiction, fantasy, and comic books. Now, if you want to pick up my action-packed fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct universe, you can find the books of the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, a Black Goth trilogy, my Black Vampire novel, The Eternal Night, my Black Sorority novel, The Thetas, and my Black Business novel, Recipe for Success. You can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to check out my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can pick up a paper copy on Lulu.com right now by clicking the link in the description box, and you can get that book for the same price it was when I offered it on a 2022 Kickstarter. And if you want to check out my first digital comic, Esteem No Good Deed, you can find Esteem No Good Deed on Kindle for just 99 cents. And if you want to help me be able to make the next SJS Direct comic, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, subscribe. Better get the coleslaw, y'all, because we're having us a barbecue. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers. John Haynes, Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.